Hello and welcome! Today we're going to dive into the incredible science of, well, you. We're talking about heredity. It's kind of like the secret story written in a biological code that explains so much about why you are the way you are. So, let's get into it. You know, it's that classic question you ask yourself when you look in the mirror, you see bits and pieces of your parents, maybe your grandparents, a whole family history just looking right back at you. But how does that actually happen? I mean, how are these features literally passed down from one generation to the next? Well, this is no accident. It's not just a coincidence. It's a really complex and honestly beautiful biological process. So today, we're going to be detectives and unravel this family resemblance mystery and see exactly how science breaks it all down. And the answer to that mystery? Well, it all comes down to one core concept: heredity. All it really means is the process of passing on traits, things like your eye color, the texture of your hair, maybe even your height, from parents to their kids. It's the fundamental reason you look like your family. Okay, so how does this transfer actually work? To get that, we need to zoom in, way in. We've got to decode our genetic blueprint. Think of it as the biological instruction manual that built you and is running your body right now. Let's look at this chain of command. It's super organized. Everything starts with the cell, right? The basic building block of all life. And inside the cell's control center, the nucleus, you find these things called chromosomes. They're basically tightly wound up threads of DNA. And DNA is the master instruction manual for your body. A single specific instruction in that manual, that's what we call a gene. And that last part, the gene, this is the real star of our show today. It's the basic unit of heredity. It's just a section of your DNA that carries the code for one specific trait. Think of it like a single sentence in the giant book that is you, saying something like, make the eyes brown, or make the hair curly. But what if there are different options for one trait, right? Like not everyone has brown eyes. That's where alleles come into play. An allele is just a different version or a different flavor of a gene. So for the eye color gene, you've got alleles for brown, blue, green, and so on. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Not all alleles are created equal. Some are dominant. Let's call this one Min2-lol. He's the strong, powerful one, and his trait always shows up. But then you have recessive alleles. Think of this one as Chin2-lol. He's a bit weaker, he gets overshadowed. His trait only gets to show itself if that dominant allele isn't there to steal the show. So, who figured all this out, this whole dominant and recessive thing? Believe it or not, it was a monk named Gregor Mendel, who we now call the father of genetics. And he cracked this incredible code by studying something you might find in your garden: pea plants. Pea plants? Really? Out of all the things in the world he could have studied, why would he dedicate years and years of his life to a simple garden vegetable? Was there something special about them? Oh, absolutely. Turns out, pea plants were the perfect little subjects for his experiments. For one, they had really distinct, easy-to-see traits like being either tall or short, or having purple or white flowers. No in-betweens. Plus, they grow super fast, so he could study generation after generation in a short amount of time. And, crucially, he could control exactly which plants bred with which. So check this out. In one of his most famous experiments, Mendel took a pure tall plant and crossed it with a pure dwarf plant. In that first generation of kids, the F1 generation, every single plant was tall. The dwarf trait just vanished. Poof, gone. But then he let those new tall plants self-pollinate. And in the next generation, the F2 generation, guess what? The dwarf trait popped right back up. And it didn't just reappear randomly. Not at all. It came back in this stunningly predictable pattern. For every 3 tall plants, there was exactly 1 dwarf plant. A 3-to-1 ratio. This was huge. It proved that traits weren't just blended together like paint, they were passed down as separate, distinct units. This amazing, consistent result led Mendel to figure out a fundamental role of genetics, a principle we now call the law of dominance. The law is pretty simple, but it's so powerful. It just states that when you have 2 different alleles, like one for tall and one for dwarf, the dominant one, tall, is always going to be the one you see. It completely masks the effect of the recessive one. And that's why all those F1 plants were tall, even though they were secretly carrying that dwarf allele. Okay, so that's all cool for pea plants, but what about us? Well, Mendel's laws apply to us too. So let's use these same ideas to answer a really fundamental human question. What actually determines if a baby is a boy or a girl? The whole secret is in our sex chromosomes. See, humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes, but it's that final 23rd pair that determines biological sex. Females have two X chromosomes, so we call them XX, and males have one X and one Y chromosome, making them XY. So here's how the genetic coin toss works. A mother, since she's XX, can only pass on an X chromosome to her child, always. The father, though, being XY, can pass on either an X or a Y. So it's actually the father's contribution that decides the baby's sex. If the sperm that wins the race carries an X, you get XX, a girl. If it carries a Y, you get XY, a boy. And what does that mean for the odds? Well, it makes the probability for each and every pregnancy a simple 50-50 shot. There's a 50% chance of getting an X from the father, resulting in a girl, and a 50% chance of getting a Y, resulting in a boy. It's all a fascinating game of chance, dictated by genetics. So we've seen how heredity gives us the fundamental blueprint for who we are, from our height all the way down to our eye color. We've decoded that whole chain of command from the cell right down to the gene. But that leaves us with one last big question. If our genes are the blueprint, then how much do our lives, our experiences, our choices, our environment get to be the architect that builds the final structure? And that, well, that's the ongoing story of what makes every single one of us unique. Thanks for joining me.